Surfside, Florida, June 24, 2021. At 1:22 a.m., a tremor shook the ground. Security cameras captured the terrace level of a luxury condominium dropping out of sight. Seconds later, the center of the 12-story Champlain Towers South collapsed into a pile of concrete and rebar. The eastern wing followed, sliding into the basement footprint. 98 people died in their beds. The structure had stood for 40 years, a standard reinforced concrete building like many others lining the Atlantic coast. To witnesses, the destruction appeared instantaneous. The collapse was the result of structural decay that began decades earlier. Champlain Towers South was a 136-unit L-shaped complex completed in 1981 in Surfside. It fell under Miami-Dade County jurisdiction. The structure used a flat-plate reinforced concrete design where floor slabs rest directly on supporting columns. 3 weeks before the collapse, maintenance staff and residents saw signs of trouble. Photos from early June 2021 showed cracking masonry and shifting planter boxes on the pool deck. Water pooled where it should have drained. These cracks and puddles were signs of an advancing structural failure. The design depended on the strength of the joints between the floor slabs and the columns. In this system, the slab has to resist punching shear, which occurs when a column begins to push through the concrete floor. Engineering standards in 1981 set specific margins for this force, but the construction of Champlain Towers South did not meet those requirements. For 40 years, the pool deck above the parking garage sat in corrosive saline air. The instability was inside the slab column joints. By the night of June 23rd, the deck had become a heavy weight held by failing connections. Internal stresses reached the limit while residents slept. The safety margin was gone. A failure in the secondary pool deck led to the collapse of the entire residential tower. 1981. Workers completed Champlain Towers South. The design specified 12-inch slabs for the pool deck. During construction, several areas were cast thinner. Rebar placement didn't match the structural drawings. The building carried these flaws for 40 years. Early June 2021, the building entered its final weeks. A punching shear failure started at slab column K13.1 and L13.1 on the pool deck. Concrete separated from the columns and dropped. Shifting weight caused masonry planter walls to crack. Nearby columns took on the extra load. Mid-June 2021, a second failure occurred in the pool deck. Thin margins held the structure together. Compressive membrane action took over as the slab jammed against the surrounding concrete. A temporary arch supported the weight through friction. Internal stresses reached a breaking point, even as the building stayed upright for a few more days. June 24, 1:15 a.m., the pool deck slab broke away from the southern wall and fell into the parking garage below. The fall triggered the main collapse. Without the pool deck, the columns supporting the tower lost their lateral bracing. 1:22 a.m., the tower columns buckled. The middle section of the building lost its footing and fell. Impact sent a heavy shock through the rest of the structure. Seconds later, the eastern wing followed. Soon after, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, sent investigators to the site. They recovered physical evidence before the rubble was cleared and cataloged the rebar and concrete fragments. The team used full-scale replicas to push them to failure in a years-long study. Examining the debris in a secure warehouse, they found a recurring pattern in the shattered concrete. The evidence showed that the building had been unstable since the day of its completion. Punching shear failure caused the pool deck slab to break around the garage columns. NIST found that the 1981 design deviated from building codes. The original plans lacked the strength required for these specific connections. The slab was thin. The steel reinforcement could not hold the calculated loads. Builders also failed to follow the drawings. Physical evidence showed rebar was placed incorrectly, which left joints weak. Weight on the slab grew over time as thick paving and heavy planters added a load the structure could not carry. Salt-laden moisture corroded the rebar for 40 decades. Expanding steel cracked the concrete from the inside. Following the collapse, a Florida court secured a settlement for the victims and their families, totaling over $1 billion. This settlement involved developers of a neighboring high-rise, insurance companies, and engineering firms responsible for recent inspections. As the legal cases ended, engineers began reassessing safety protocols for thousands of similar buildings. This disaster exposed gaps in the safety standards meant to protect these structures. Champlain Towers South forced engineers to rethink how they evaluate reinforced concrete buildings. NIST findings updated structural standards and professional codes. Building codes now require more frequent, invasive inspections of parking decks and pool slabs. Rebar placement rules are stricter. Coastal buildings must undergo mandatory structural reviews, and many cities shortened the 40-year inspection cycle. Champlain Towers South fell because of flawed design, poor construction, and decades of saltwater corrosion. This disaster showed how one weak connection can destroy a whole building.